I'm very, very honored to speak to this gathering. I did not know a lot about InnVision Shelter Network until I was invited to speak here and heard a little bit about it over the years. But what I've learned today, listening to Sabrina, being with all of you, sitting with Corey, this organization just blows me away. And this recent merger of these two organizations coming together to serve this community is an astonishing accomplishment in an area of the world, in an area of the United States, in an area of California, where you can hardly imagine that people could be homeless in this wealthy, affluent, really golden place. It's always a shock to learn the depth of some of the challenges we face in this incredibly affluent nation of the United States, this incredible state of California. And for many, many years, I've been working on big, giant global issues. In 1977, I was studying with the great Buckminster Fuller. We affectionately called him Bucky. And Bucky educated millions and millions of people about the problems and challenges of our time. But the way Bucky educated people was in a way that had you realize that one individual can make a difference that impacts all of humanity. And that's what his life was about. He coined the phrase, a little individual can make a difference. He lived that kind of a life. He was an example for millions and millions of people. And I knew him very, very well. Many people called him the grandfather of the future. He taught me how to listen to my own children and realize that they were my elders in universe time. They'd come into a more complete, more evolved universe than I could understand, except through their eyes. Those of you who are parents, think about that, your children being elders in universe time. But most importantly, Buckminster Fuller taught me and many millions of people how to take a stand, how to recognize that when you make a commitment, when you actually begin to live what I call a committed life, a life where your commitments wake you up in the morning, your commitments tell you what to wear, who to talk to, what to do, rather than your desires or your wants, your life becomes liberated into the kind of life where every breath is an opportunity to make a difference that impacts the quality of life for all people and all future generations. And I feel like this breakfast, 1,000 people in this incredible part of the world, that each person here, if you really listen to Sabrina, you realize that homeless people, homeless families, are not people to feel sorry for. They're strong, resilient, dignified, incredibly committed people who we can partner with and learn from. Learn about courage. Learn about overcoming obstacles. In my life, one of the great privileges I've had is working on the end of world hunger. And I'm not just talking about alleviating the suffering of the hungry, which is a wonderful thing to do, but we committed the organization called the Hunger Project, which was co-founded by Buckminster Fuller, to actually begin to work on hunger and poverty in a way that was designed and rooted in ending it. And homelessness is like that too. It's not like we don't know the cure. It's not like AIDS or cancer where we don't have a cure. We know what to do when a child is hungry. And there's more food than we can use to feed twice as many people on Earth. So it's an indictment of the human family that there's hungry people on this planet. And it's an indictment of the human family that there are people who don't have shelter, children who don't have a place to sleep at night, older people, younger people, families that don't have shelter in a society as rich as the one we live in. Working on hunger and poverty gave me the great privilege of traveling the world, managing operations in 50 countries, countries like Ethiopia, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Namibia, Mozambique. These are places where I've worked, where I've lived, where I've worked with some of the most extraordinary people I've ever known. They're not famous, but they're people that I used to call poor. I called them poor because that's what most people would label them. But when you work side by side with a person like Sabrina and her mom, when you work side by side with women in Ethiopia after the 1984-1985 famine, when you work side by side or get to know the people in Liberia, particularly the women who ended that tragic war, you realize there's nothing poor about them. And that label demeans who we are and those of us who would call them poor. They're whole and complete people like you and I, living in the brutal circumstances of abject poverty. And that is a way to look at any homeless person, a whole and complete person living in the brutal circumstances that sometimes come with a society in this country that's becoming more unequal by the day. So the opportunity and privilege to partner with people that have the kind of resilience, strength, and determination to pull themselves out of situations so oppressive, so demeaning, so heartbreakingly cruel, that takes away people's spirit, that has people forget that they're competent, that they're able, that they can do anything. To partner with people like that and restore that integrity in their heart restores our integrity, restores the integrity of the relationship of the human family with itself. I work on environmental issues now, and the facts there are pretty cruel and stunning too regarding homelessness. We don't think of the environment and homelessness in the same breath, but the facts are pretty unconfrontable. 200,000 people a day are leaving environments that no longer can sustain them. 200,000 people a day. So we have a global homeless problem that's greater than any time in human history. I invite you at this breakfast, eating this beautiful food in this extraordinarily lovely hotel, to recognize that we all have way, way, way more than we need. You know, in the culture I work in now, indigenous peoples of the Amazon, they have an ethic that the community, the health and well-being of the community, is the highest good. And the individuals will be cared for within the ethic of caring for the community. So rather than having the individual be the highest good, or the health and well-being of the individual being the most important and highest ethic, it's the community that's the highest ethic, and within that, the individuals will flourish. Our society is a little bit different. We sometimes individuate at the expense of the whole community. That's not a good thing or a bad thing, but it's something to pay attention to, and perhaps we have something we can learn from indigenous people. In the Achuar Shuar culture, deep in the Amazon rainforest, given that their ethic or their commitment, highest commitment, is the health and well-being of the community, no one would ever take more than they need. And if someone does start taking more than they need, they send them to the shaman. They think they're mentally ill. If you think about that, it's kind of odd, but it makes sense given that context. You know, in the United States, one of the fastest growing industries in our country, it's actually starting to surpass the automobile industry, is storage. Just think about that. Storage. What is storage? When I tried to explain that to the indigenous people who don't even understand ownership, they were totally baffled with that. But if you think about the fact that we are building little villages outside of our big cities for the stuff that we cannot fit in the houses we already have. Have you seen them? Little villages, little storage villages. Some of them are on Bayshore Freeway, and they've got little gingerbread. They're kind of cute little houses. We've got millions of homeless people, but we're not building houses for them. We're building houses for the stuff that we cannot fit in the house we already have. And that's a little sign about a culture that may have lost its way. So I invite us to use this breakfast not only as an opportunity to support our friends and associates that are involved in the InnVision Shelter Network, but to relook at your own life, to relook at the way you're living, the choices you're making, and to see if you want to reallocate a healthy portion of your financial resources away from what pulls at us, which is accumulating more and more and more that we don't really need. In fact, ultimately, when you get it, you don't really want it anymore, and you have to figure out what to do with it. And reallocating some of those resources that are unwittingly going to consume things that we really don't want anymore, we don't need, that really doesn't make us healthy and well, and is doing some damage to the environment and to the culture in which we live, and reallocate some of those resources and donate it to this incredible organization, the InnVision Shelter Network. You know, I know Jillian already made the big ask, but I've been fundraising all my life. I love asking people for money. So I have to do a little PS to Jillian's beautiful ask. I invite you to make this breakfast today, the 1,000 people in this room, take this new merger of this organization through the roof financial, so that thousands and thousands and thousands more Sabrinas can have the kind of success that she talked about. Because you came here today, because 1,000 people had breakfast together, thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people will have a home, a permanent home, and get back on their feet. So it's my privilege to invite you to take a stand to end homelessness, to not just make it a little bit less brutal or cruel, but to end it. We can end it. We can wipe it out. To take a stand today, to volunteer, to give money, to get involved, and to never pass a homeless person again and think the way you thought of them before. To recognize over there is a whole and complete human being who's had some brutal circumstances to deal with and has fallen down. And you and I can pick them up, can give them a hand, and can get them on their way so that they can join the health and well-being of the human family we all dream of. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your participation in this breakfast. Thank you for what you were thinking about giving, and thank you for making that a little bigger after my talk. And thank you for being part of a movement to end the scourge of homelessness and to have the kind of community, the kind of state, the kind of country, and the kind of world we all dream of. Thank you.